Morning.
Morning.
Right, so, right, good morning and welcome to this hybrid meeting of Social Services, Housing and Community Safety Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of February 2024. I'm Councillor Charlotte Goldsworthy and I will be chairing this meeting. Before we move on to the next agenda item, please note that this meeting will be recorded. Please can you ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting? Can members and officers who are present in the chamber please use their microphones when speaking? And when asked to raise your hand, can members who are virtually viewing this meeting raise your electronic hand? Members who are in the chamber, please raise your physical hand and hopefully me or Ellen will see you. For the purposes of declarations, I would like to confirm that we will be scrutinising items 7, 10, 11, 12 and 13 today on the Cabinet Board papers. Now I will move on to agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest? I don't see any. If any members have any declarations in relation to report on today's agenda, can you please indicate now?
I can't see any, Chair.
We will now move on to the Cabinet papers. Agenda for pre-decision scrutiny. As previously mentioned, we've decided to scrutinise items 7, 10, 11, 12 and 13 on the Cabinet Board agenda. Right. Going on to item 7, which is the permission to consult on the tongue-tied, on the review of commissioned violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence emergency accommodation services. This report is for decision. Please note that Appendix 1 is attached at agenda item 14, which is private appendix. Officers, would you like to add any additional information to this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, Housing Support Grant is a grant that we get from Welsh Government, and it funds a number of support services for those that have experienced or are experiencing violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. The funding that we utilise for this includes something called emergency accommodation services, and they are commonly referred to as women's refuges. So that's how you may have come across, that's the name you've probably come across and recognise. The commissioning team have undertaken a review of these services in line and working with the Vawdr SV leadership group as well and other partners. And the aim of this review has been to try and identify ways to remodel the current services that we've got so that it's more in line with best practice, and it ensures that our emergency accommodation services is best placed to meet our current needs and also our future needs. Something that I just wanted to note is that this work is not linked to any financial efficiency targets and isn't driven by financial considerations. The whole purpose of this is to ensure that the models we commission offer optimised services in line with the needs of those people that require such services. We've had an indicative settlement from Welsh Government in respect of the Housing Support Grant, and we anticipate retaining the budget for these services at the same level that we provided for 23-24 financial year, unless obviously there becomes a cut in Welsh Government funding, but we don't anticipate that. Hayley and her team have done a huge amount of engagement work to make sure that these models truly do reflect the needs of those that require the services. So that has included working with service providers who deliver services like this. And also as well, most importantly, there's been a lot of work with people that have lived experience of needing to access emergency accommodation too. The feedback from the engagement we've done has been really supportive of the model that officers are proposing. However, obviously it's really important for us to realise that current providers will have some anxieties around any changes, because we would have to undertake a procurement process. But it is also important to note that we would have to take a procurement process even if we kept the models as they are. And the reason why providers will be concerned, I think, especially smaller providers, is the impact on their wider business if they're not successful in securing a new contract. So we have to be very mindful that we don't disadvantage any smaller providers or local providers through a procurement process. So we're very acutely aware of that. We also undertook a lot of research into good practice across the UK, and we did a very comprehensive analysis of need so that we could understand what support people require and if there was any gaps in the services that we have available. The paper before you today explains that we have indeed identified a need to diversify the types of emergency accommodation that we fund so that those models can better meet demands. And in particular, there was a need to make sure that those people that need to access emergency refuge that have co-occurring needs such as mental health, substance misuse are able to access emergency accommodation quickly. From the work that officers have done, they've tabled 3 options in the paper, and they've set out the strengths and weaknesses of each of those options. As I mentioned, currently, officers' preferred option is option 2, which is to remodel emergency accommodation so that we reduce the number of fixed site refuges from 3 refuges to 2 refuges, and then we would realign the funding from discontinuing one of those refuges to purchase to provide a number of dispersed units, so they would be self-contained flats and accommodation for people. And in that way, we'd be able to better meet the needs of people with maybe co-occurring needs, men, people that maybe wouldn't be able to access the refuges we've got now. However, before any final recommendation, officers want to make any final recommendations to you, we want to undertake a 90-day public consultation on the 3 options, setting out the benefits, disbenefits and opportunities and strengths of those options, because that will then help us to refine the proposals we bring back to you, and make sure that we've got a really informed a really informed option for you to consider later. So thank you, Chair. I don't know, Hayley, if there was anything you wanted to add.
Yes, if I could please. It was just to add that the consultation is to reach out to those people that don't currently access emergency accommodation. We know we've got huge gaps in the service provision, but there's also those people who decide not to access services at all. So we're really keen to get their feedback on why, and see if there's something we need to do differently around that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any members have any questions? I can see there's indication, but they're from Sharon Freegard.
Yeah, I just thought it's a bit of a concern, really, Shelley. You're talking about the dispersed units, but does that mean then that we're going to just be taking the single men? So the single men that we need to rehouse is going to go into those units. And yet again, then the women and domestic abuse and the families will be set aside.
Thank you for the question, and my apologies because I probably didn't explain myself very well. No, this service will all be for those people that need emergency accommodation to flee domestic abuse, sexual violence. This will only be for people that require emergency accommodation to remove themselves from an unsafe situation.
But that's in terms of domestic violence. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
Because obviously we're going to have a lot of criteria that we could fill with single homeless men who need to have their own space. But so long as we're clear on it's domestic abuse.
It is 100% domestic abuse. It is not general needs. This money is, like I say, we've got an amount of money that we spend on supporting people that are experiencing domestic abuse to be able to get to safety and support them. And we are not wanting to take any money away from that. We're wanting to just enhance the types of models and support services that those that are experiencing domestic abuse and need to escape from the situation to safety, that they get the accommodation they need and they get it quickly.
Okay, thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll now consider Appendix 1, which is attached at item 14. This item is in private, so I propose access to meetings to resolve to exclude the public for the following items pursuant to section 100A, bracket 4 and 5 of the Local Government Act 1972 and the relevant exempt paragraphs of Part 4 of Schedule 12A to the above Act. Can I please have a seconder?
A second.
Are there any abstentions?
Councillor Pregard's that a legacy hand?
Yes, it is.
Oh, thank you. I can see no
You'll be
abstentions, Chair.
pleased to know it is.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will assume that you're in agreement with access to meetings and that we move into private.
I can see no indications the contrary, Chair.
Can I please ask for the recording to be stopped and members of the public to leave the meeting?